Hey everyone, welcome back to the Particle Accelerator, where we talk to future thinking business leaders about how to grow their team and accelerate their business. I'm here today with Greg Tucker. Greg is a customer experience pioneer who has identified over 25 billion in business opportunities across 50 plus client engagements. With nearly 30 years of experience transforming CX for companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Wells Fargo, and Walmart, Greg brings a rigorous ROI focused approach to what many consider a fluffy discipline. His upcoming book, The Frictionless Brand Experience, reveals how reducing customer friction can double revenues and prevent the 3 trillion in annual e-commerce waste. This episode explores the intersection of AI, customer research, and measurable business outcomes. Greg, welcome to the Particle Accelerator.
It's great to be here, Ben.
Is there anything that folks should know about you just to add to the introduction there?
My hobby and passion is wine, and that doesn't get in the way of any of the business work I do, but it adds a nice spice to life.
Nice, sommelier of sorts. Yeah, good. I have a many good friends that have that wine hobby. Some great professionals. Have you tried the Texas wine landscape at all?
I visited them. They're beautiful. They're doing a great job on wine. In fact, demand outstrips supply of Texas wine, so they're doing something right.
Yeah, my wife and I love the we love the Texas Hill Country and doing those little wine tours and going down there. And I will say, like the restaurant scene in Fredericksburg, Texas, is like nothing I've ever seen. And for the bourbon guys, the Garrison Brothers Distillery is over there in High Texas, which is really close to Fredericksburg, and it's a solid distillery, even if
Yeah.
isn't in Kentucky. So yeah, that I'm here in Dallas, and that is just like a little slice of like Napa that I don't have to go to California for. It's just right here in my backyard.
Yeah. And they've got Salt Lick barbecue there, which they don't have in California.
That's right. That's right. So, Greg, you've been championing ROI focused customer experience for over 20 years. Before it was a trendy, before AI made it scalable. Give our audience the elevator pitch. What does Tucker and Company actually do?
We help every brand out there identify how they can deliver their brand experience without the friction that's really bleeding off, at least half of their potential revenues. And it sounds like a crazy number, but every time we calculate it, it comes out the same way. And when we show the results of where people are leaking their revenues, they're finding hundreds of millions of dollars, no matter who they are.
That's cool. You came from traditional management consulting. How did that shape your approach differently from other CX consultants?
Well, I came out of Stanford Business School and went to the traditional management consultants, similar to what McKinsey does. And you had to have an ROI for everything you recommended. So if you didn't, you were fired. It's that simple. And so it's not like you could get by with that. So, we'd walk in with every recommendation and here is the impact on revenues, cost, and here's why it's worth your while. So it became a discipline for us. And when I stepped into CX, I saw that many of the advice and counsels and consultants were talking about general impacts. And I had spent 10 years leading CX at some of my clients who wanted me to stop talking to them about it and lead it for them. And we identified hundreds of millions of dollars worth of benefit and delivered it. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was used to that, and I just found it's a missing thing in the CX community that the CX community needs to improve its discipline on.
That's cool. You said that places like Bain or McKinsey, um, if you made recommendations without a business case, you were fired. How do you apply that same rigor to something as seemingly intelligible as customer experience?
Well, if you deliver a great customer experience, you'd expect customers to spend more and stay longer. And if they do that, then they're going to give positive word of mouth, and that's going to cost you less to get the next customer. So it makes common sense. but very few people put that down, with a decimal point or quantify the impact of that. So they talk about it, but it's qualitative and just storytelling in nature. We actually pull out the calculator and show exactly what that is. And if you're trying to discuss that with the C-suite, they expect that you've done your work and that you actually have the numbers on it.
Yeah. Can you give us a specific example where that quantification surprised even the client?
Well, we were working with a beverage company that was selling, they sell through different retailers, think Walmart, Target, grocery stores, everything like that. They wondered how their customer experience was. And so they actually asked us to staple ourselves to one of their customers. They went through the shopping journey. Sounds simple, sounds qualitative. And we said, we're going to identify some opportunities for you. And so we went out, we found them. We found out through interviews, and they said, that's kind of interesting. We kind of see that, see where we're losing some sales. We don't know how much it was. And so we backed up our qualitative work with quantitative analysis through customer surveys. We identified just short of $1 billion of lost opportunity for them, and we showed it
Interesting.
to. And they first called BS on that and said that's crazy. And as we looked at it, they finally said, we agree with you, but we're not gonna, we're not going to put all that in our budget. We're only going to put several $100 million in our budget.
That's great. That's great. Do you mind if so? I'm gonna break script for a minute. So we've used when I've helped folks with product build their product and analyze either churn or maybe conversion rate issues. I've used a couple of different tools. Pendo is one. Um, I've just used a couple of tools that help me with session replay.
Okay.
Are you predominantly using session replay and heat mapping tools to do that? Or are you doing more customer interview and talk a little bit more about that approach?
Yeah. So the approach we took was customer interviews. And so because we needed to make this a retail centric research study and impact, we needed to be in the retailer with actual shoppers. So we did it that way. We have done eye tracking where we outfit shoppers, ask them to shop the aisle, see what they stare at, and where they're losing their concentration, where they're making those switching, and then perform what we call a an RTA, a retrospective think aloud, where we show them their video and ask them what they were thinking along the way, because they
Yeah.
don't know their behavior, but we can show it to them and they can tell us why they did what they did. They can't tell us what they did, but they can tell us why they did what they did when we show them that video.
Yeah, that's
So we use
interesting.
those two
So,
tools.
no, that's really cool. So, I just had an aha moment. I had an assumption in my mind when I see CX. This is something that's in the software development or SaaS
Yeah.
space, which is like UI UX or this CX overlay of research. Would you say most of your projects are in the retail brick and mortar space? And how does that translate to digital? Like, are you doing CX in SaaS as well?
We do CX and SaaS for sure. I call it a little bit more UX because it's really the user
Yep.
experience when we do that. So there's an example of a fintech company who is, they're offering business financing to small businesses. And so you apply online, you get your answers, you apply for loans, you get an answer immediately, and you can get your funding within hours or days, not weeks or months. And so it kind of
Yeah.
replaces the banks. Their UX was under scrutiny, and we identified, we did competitive analysis. We had people go through that application experience with their competitors and with them, and we use that benchmarking to actually come out with improvements on that, both in terms of a flow, screen design, specific, flow, data flows along the way, so that they can actually get their adoption a little bit faster. People were dropping and kind of stop the dropouts throughout that process.
Yeah, great. Okay, perfect. That really clarifies my understanding. So your upcoming book is called The Frictionless Brand Experience. Walk us through the core thesis. What are these 5 areas of friction you've identified, and why should every C-suite executive care?
Well, friction for customers, is not a foreign concept. Everyone has them. So anyone who's been had a flight canceled, lost a bag, had anything misdelivered, been served the wrong thing, picked up a fast food order that wasn't right, and got home and and was disappointed. Everyone's run into the type of friction. But we looked at more than 50 different case studies. We identified the 5 types. As the first one is the brand experience, which is what you're promising and what's not being delivered. And in that case, some of that is you're promising the wrong things, you're not communicating it well, and or you're not even aligning the organization to what you're trying to deliver. A second part is the product experience, which is when you actually get the product, is it working as you expected it to be? Is it working for your specific use? Sometimes it's just a product packaging, which is I want to buy your product. I just don't know that it's going to work for me. And your packaging doesn't allow me to figure that piece out, whether that's online or in a retail shop. Another part is digital friction. Everyone runs into it. Who's the king of getting rid of digital friction? Amazon. They started with one-click ordering, and they've been taking friction out of that experience ever since. So they're the masters of it. But there's plenty of digital friction in terms of product data, user experience, UI, clicks, response rates, and sometimes they just, it's really just a bad design. We also see organizational friction, which is in different organizational silos, cultural barriers. And then we also see operational friction, which is policies and procedures that are meant to serve the lawyers or the accountants, but not serve the customers or the employees. And so those type of business processes or procedures, really get in the way. And those are kind of our 5 categories, but we've got so many different types of friction inside there.
Yeah, we're working on an AI solution with a customer that analyzes customer calls and review feedback, so like customer complaints, so any kind of inputs from the customer at the point of service. So this would be like any kind of friction, any kind
Right.
of customer call, customer email. Typically, customers don't email and tell you the good things you're doing. They jump on the chats and the phone when something's gone wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And this what this solution is aimed to do is share corrective action measures that the operation can take and flag real-time issues that need escalation. So the brand experience is like, say you went to rent a car and you had a bad experience. They didn't have your car there, and you go and say like, I'm really frustrated. This has been a bad experience. The solution has enabled a phone call to be placed by a senior customer care representative to say, "Hey, I know you just had a bad problem. Your next rental is going to be on us." And so I think there's also this opportunity, and interested what you think is there, sure, we want to reduce the friction up front, but if poop happens, as they say, right?
Yeah.
Is there also an opportunity to respond with empathy to the customer, to do service recovery?
Ben, you're on it perfectly. So we talk about service delivery, we talk about support, but there's also service recovery. And the example you gave, if you come back to somebody and say like, oh, the experience we delivered does not live up to our brand. Okay, you're doing 2 things. You're owning it. Okay, so you're not deflecting it, which is it's not it's not the customer's problem. You're owning the problem, but you're also recommitting to delivering a non-brand experience the next time. And then you're making it up, you're providing something. Maybe a discount on the next one doesn't work for them because there was something different, but maybe something else, would. And so you never know, but just that outreach is really important so that they know and they know that you care. And when people see those 2 things, they're going to have a resonance with the brand that they wouldn't have if they're not just going to flush it down the drain.
That's awesome. So of those five areas, which one do you see companies underestimating most often?
Yeah, I think the organizational and cultural, or kind of the organizational friction is one where organizations don't like to face it. So they everyone talks about digital friction. Okay, you can talk about it because you're just talking about machines, not real people, and and we kind of live in a digital world. You can talk about the brand and where it falls down. That's one where people don't quite know, but the organizational piece of it, you've got different departments, different silos. If you staple yourself through to a customer as they move through your organization, you're going to see lots of places where different departments simply aren't aligned. And they're focused on their own problems and their own outcomes instead of the customers. And when you get them aligned, it's fabulous. So when you deliver an on-brand experience, the numbers are off the charts, Ben. Customer profitability 3 or 4 times higher. Your net promoter scores are 50 points higher than when you deliver it off-brand. And your retention rates, your attrition rates are a fraction of what they are when you give a bad one. It's just that organizations aren't aligned to doing it.
Yeah. So 3 trillion in e-commerce waste due to friction, 25 billion in opportunities across your 50 projects. Do you even begin to calculate numbers like that? I don't know how you would calculate that's uh that's that's those are big numbers. Walk us through the methodology that you use to calculate something like that.
Yeah. So for every company, it feels like the calculation is a little bit of a snowflake. Every situation's just a little bit different. But what we look at, is a variety of different things. The first one we look at is when you deliver an on-brand experience, what happens? And just, you can find it. It's like everything works great. Every department does their job. It's in football terms, we're coming up on the Super Bowl. Like if every play is drawn to go for a touchdown, well, every play doesn't go for a touchdown because the defense gets in the way. Think as friction as the defense in this case, because we're just not aligned. And so I think that's a part. And then we look at what happens when it starts falling apart. Okay. And when you compare those, you quickly get a best practice benchmark and a worst practice benchmark, and you can see the difference. You can see it in terms of costs, revenues, customer attrition, every metric that you have. And those are a great tool and a great method because we're not talking about somebody else's business. We're talking about your business. This isn't we have something we call the correlation trap, which is when you get into the correlation of big customer centric companies are more successful than those who are not. Everyone kind of rolls their eyeballs at that one. But when we talk about your company and those actions, that we really find it. And so we pull out the calculator and make those determinations. In some cases, people don't know about your product, so brand awareness is a challenge. In some, they need to try it before they need a trial. That could be a sample. That could be getting in B2B. It could be sending out a sample so people can try your product because they just simply don't know if it's going to fit for them. It could be a sample inside of a retail situation. So there's a variety of different ways of looking at that, and then people can track those. They can connect the dots from that type of improvement or reduction in friction to the outcomes very, very easily.
Yeah, you mentioned customers who experience friction are 5 times more likely to switch brands. How
Yeah.
do you qualify that?
Well, we in this case we asked 2,000 customers. When would you consider switching brands, and why would you consider switching brands? And then we also measured that as which ones had run into different types of friction. And so it's really based on customer data. So we know that if they can't find certain things, if they're uncertain about it, they will continue to shop around for brands. Customers have a problem they want to solve. Okay, they're looking for the brands to solve that problem. Okay, if you make it easy for them, then they're gonna come to you and they're gonna stay with you. If you make it hard for them, they're gonna continue to look around. And so they told us they would, why they would switch brands and where they would go. And that's what prompted us. What was surprising, Ben, was that it only took a little bit of friction to actually make it, so on the scale of no friction to a little bit of friction, we saw a doubling in brand switching. Okay, so it doesn't take much. If you have a lot of friction, brand switching is five times higher. Now,
Yeah.
5x is really bad, but 2x is not that great. So when people say, well, I'm not that bad, the answer is any bad is brand switching.
Yeah, no, I think rental cars is a great just case study example because, a couple of bad experiences at budget and I'm never there again. I'll be a loyal Hertz or Avis customer for the foreseeable future until, um, especially with loyalty programs and the kinds of things that make you sticky once you're on the brand, to lose a customer is like a huge lifetime value issue.
Yeah, yeah, Ben, you're right, and I think on that topic, when you lose somebody, they say, well, let's get a win back. Okay, the win backs are tremendously expensive because there's nothing worse than counting on somebody, having them let you down, and then say, well, I'd like you to count on me again, and the answer is why. Okay, you can buy that back through some type of special discount or a free offer, but it's really hard to win that back because that trust is fleeting.
Yeah. So you were saying you use eye tracking to understand what's happening in customers' minds. Tell us about that. What does that reveal that traditional research misses?
Yeah, I think a lot of traditional research, if you're just interviewing a customer, they'll tell you they're kind of thinking it out loud, and they're not actually aware of what they do. And that's what we've determined. So when you put the eye tracking on, and you're asking them to just shop as they normally would, they walk through it. There's two things you learn. One is we call a gaze sequence, which is what do you look at first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and tenth. Where do you end it? And gaze and kind of your gaze duration, which is how long do you stare at different things. And the combination of those things helps you understand you did this, you did this first, you did this second, and you hung there for a long time. Then you moved to something, you didn't stay there very long. Tell us why you did that. And they can actually tell you what they were thinking, what their decision process, what they were searching for, and why they weren't finding it. And if you're savvy about it, you can actually, what you really want them to do is get to your product, stay there, and then solve their problems so that they don't keep looking around. That's all you're trying to do in a retail situation. If you're online, what you want them to do is find the spot on the website page that allows them to get what they need to have done, get it done, get their job to be done, complete, and then hit checkout and move on. That's what great looks like. It's not hard, but it's hard to actually get customers to describe it. You need it through observation, and then they can tell you when you show it back to them that they can tell you exactly what they were thinking.
Yeah. Um, you presented eye tracking research to Lume on whole body deodorant shopping. What surprising insight came from watching people actually shop?
Yeah, I think people are searching for problems with odor control and wetness, and that's known. It's a big problem. The retailers don't allow the vendors to put out a lot of information about at the shelf level. They just want product placements. But the customers, the shoppers are uncertain about whether or not it's going to work for them. And if they're uncertain about it and they don't know how to make a decision, they're frustrated, they're confused, it feels complex, and some of them just kind of opt out. And some of them, and at the same time, some of them Some of them find, turn the product around, do some research, and what they're looking for is they still got a problem to find, and that problem can be embarrassing for them, especially for deodorants. And so it can show up in a variety of different situations. For some people, it's simply an annoyance. For some, it gets to the point of embarrassment that they feel they need to do some online research. What we actually found is that online shoppers, will run into even more challenges than the in-store shoppers, which is a little bit of a surprise.
Hmm, interesting.
Yeah.
So you've said that AI feels like 1997 all over again. As someone who's been doing CX research for decades, how has AI fundamentally changed what's possible in customer discovery?
Yeah, so I'd say we're on the cusp of it. It feels like that's why it's 1997. Back in For those who weren't born in 1997, there were companies like Netscape who came out with this thing called the browser and took advantage of the internet for the very first time just to do basic search. Shortly after that, a new startup named Google came out and said we got a better search engine than Yahoo, which was the early leader, market leader. And then it was on. And then it's about the quality of search. What we're seeing with AI is people are trying it out. It's permeating everything at the same time. And it's giving you answers back that are, in some cases, more informed and rounded out than you could ever imagine. Okay, because it's going, it's pulling in data in different ways. What I love about AI is it can do visual search as well. And so that's something that the early internet wasn't able to do. And at the same time, it can be gamed at the same time, and giving people misdirection that requires them to kind of check things out again.
Yeah,
But in customer research on that part is we're able to get answers back from customers, and turning, just as you mentioned, getting customer support calls turned into insights, not in weeks, not in days, but in hours or in real time. And that
right.
wasn't that scalable. It's never been that scalable, and it's only going to get more scalable. So real-time information and insights is available to
Yeah,
everyone.
that's a lot like that tool we're working on that's taking
Yeah,
live calls, live transcripts from live calls, encoding them and analyzing them and turning them into sentiment data within, minutes.
right.
And so we're definitely experiencing some examples. But what's a good example of that for you? Where have you seen that really move the needle?
Well, I think when people are, if somebody was looking, well, first of all, in product search, okay, it's popping up, and it's, AI is actually kind of bypassing some of the sponsorship results, which are one of the big friction points for online shoppers is sponsored results, which is I type something in, I'm getting a result. It's nothing what I typed in, but it's sponsored, and it's an annoyance. And I think AI is kind of moving past that, and it's actually pulling in, it's saving people time because it can pull in sentiment data about those products, yeah, into your search results. So instead of taking 5 steps to figure out, is this a product I want to buy, you can do it in 1 or 2 steps. So I
Yeah.
think that's an immediate. I think the context for people. So it's like I need a product for my house, but one example might be, like I need a new floor cleaner. What's a good one? The answer is what type of floor, and whether you have a tile floor or wood floor is a very different. It tells you need very different products. Those products look differently on the shelf, but in this case, it can guide you to those things, and if you've got the right search engine, it can remember different things. So I think it moves you a little bit faster along that way, and I think you can kind of trust things. I think in the customer research side, we're actually able to take all the personalization and messaging information that you might want to have, and it can actually build that in. So you can move from insights to messaging, to effective messaging much faster than you could before.
Yeah, beyond just speed, AI brings a level of rigor and discipline to data that wasn't possible before. How are you using AI to actually monetize customer insights in ways you couldn't 5 years ago?
Yeah. I tell you what, that part is really just now presenting. I think the numbers, number side of it, especially with the machine learning that's always been part of AI, but it's really been integrated into the idea a little bit more contextual search now. You can you look at the percentages and you can start making those trade-offs right away. So you can, in the old days, you might tell you here are five things, but it might not tell you what percent are the most impactful. Now you can kind of work from worst problem down to the easiest problem to solve, which is where where the juice might be. You can do that with a little bit more rigor that wasn't there before, and you can convince people. Usually, here are 10 problems. We're going to work on the top three because they represent 70% of the opportunity. And that allows a little faster alignment. It faster allows commitment. You can you use fewer projects, which means you can move them along faster. And you can kind of find your treasure simply faster than you did before. And then that once once you go on your treasure hunt and you come back with some great results, people want you to do more. It becomes higher on the priority chart, and something else that was getting in the way kind of moves out. So it's
Yeah.
great. It's great for executors. It's great, and in this case, we're doing it for the customers. So they're seeing faster results as well, and I think that helps the brand deliver consistency and reliability, just like you mentioned at the very beginning, Ben.
Yeah. Are there areas where you found AI falls short or still needs human interpretation?
Yeah, I think it's early stages. So I always say like a year ago, we applied AI to some research we were doing for somebody who sells hair supplies, and so think blow dryers and things like that. And we had just finished all our research. We took all the data, we put it into an AI tool, and it gave us some of the insights back to us. Some of it was right on. It was spot on. So a third of it was spot on. It's like we could have used AI to do this, and it would have given us that third of the answers. The other third, and the next third was it gave us general direction. It's not worth paying for, but it wasn't wrong. And a third of it was it's given us the wrong answers. Okay, so
Right.
now that was a year ago, and I'm sure that the speed of change. Sam Altman, in a private conversation, told me he doesn't measure speed in like in years or months. He measures everything in days, and it might take 100 days, which is a quarter. Okay, but he goes that 100 is going to turn into 10 pretty soon,
Yeah.
and then it's
Yeah,
going
we're
to turn
actually,
into two. I mean,
yeah.
it's fast.
Yeah, we're writing a piece of content right now that the new business cycle is no longer like an annual cycle is not fast enough. So my buddy and we're working on a piece of content that's saying that the annual planning cycle of a year is putting companies at a significant disadvantage.
Yeah,
That pivotal decisions may need to be made at the quarter, and so there's a new level of visibility that you need to course correct because you could have significant changes in market share in just a quarter worth of business.
yeah, yeah,
And so annual planning needs to fundamentally change, and folks need to feel that time compression in their, a lot of my customers are recovering from legacy software, right?
right.
But the new legacy is something that was built, 5 years ago, maybe even. And so we're helping them modernize, but the cost of waiting till your next planning cycle to carve out the budget to do the modernization, by that time, the market may have shifted so much that you wouldn't have the opportunity to hold market share. Like the cycle has already shifted past you. And so the real fear of falling behind isn't just academic or maybe something you can self-soothe over. It's this real issue to like get your CX, your customer experience right because time is going much faster than it ever has.
Right. And Ben, let's take the extension of that. you get your last year's customer satisfaction data, like it's already, obsolete. And
Yeah,
so
you may have
now,
already lost a lot of lifetime value. Yeah, that's a great point.
you're still you're working on you're working on problems that don't exist anymore, and so you've got to work on the new problems. So like you talked about the budget cycle, the investment, the decision cycle, but your input cycle on that is just as has to make that change as well, because
Yeah.
when in the tech business you can really see it if you're coming out with AI products and software, okay, or it's being impacted by it. Annual product cycles are, feel like they're moving like glaciers.
Yeah, no, that's great. You had mentioned on our pre-call something that really resonated. You mentioned that you know what technology does. It reduces friction. Unpack that first. How do you see the relationship between CX strategy and technology implementation?
Yeah, so when you're imagining what a great experience, a brand experience, and a great customer experience is, you want to automate as much of that as possible, so it's not just, it's more efficient for you to do, but it's also scalable and allows your employees to work on higher order issues. So support calls are a great way of of thinking about that way. So technology's got to keep up with that. But I think the other part is, so your technology implementation needs to be, move to an agile, faster way, instead of, some companies have a kind of a 3-year backlog. Like, my customers need something, tell them to call us in 3 years when it's ready. And you're going to lose people in the middle of that. And it's not the technologist's fault, but it's their responsibility. And
Yeah.
so that part needs to speed up. I think the other part is, if customers are just simply much technologically savvier than they are before, so, and they're being influenced by the fast movers. So I worked at AAA. And at AAA, you're kind of wondering, when's my tow truck going to arrive? Well, Uber comes out, and there's an Uber app which tells you exactly when you're, not only when your car is going to get there, it allows you to monitor it across over the time. So everyone's been impacted by others outside their business, and you've got to bring in, today's best practices, because that's what your customers are expecting.
Yeah. At the risk of this sounding like a plug, because that's not how I intend it, but we've started to recognize that, our target customer is the CTO or CEO or CTO, COO of like a $100 million business. And we've realized that they're getting those kinds of external pressures. This
Right.
competitor comes up with a different, better solution, or just something is happening that they didn't originally plan for. And so what we're suggesting is that they have a choice. They can take that external outcome and they can press it on their existing staff. They can say, hey, this is something else that we need you to do. And then the directors sitting below those executives now have to figure out how to squeeze more, blood from the
Yeah.
turnip, or get more out of the
Yeah.
existing team. Whereas then we offer an alternative to that, which is, hey, we'll give you an outcome focused team, and we'll report to you as if we were a director, like cross functional team, and then we'll report optics to you, from the boardroom to the
Right.
code review, or from the boardroom to the execution plan and execution results. Because it really is happening that the market is moving at such a faster pace that the plan that you had at the beginning of the year, and then these external factors are coming up so quickly that there needs to be a way to respond faster. And it's not always possible to just push your team for more outcomes.
Right.
Where do you see companies fail to transitioning CX insights into actual technology solutions?
Yeah, I think there are a handful of barriers from taking what you see with the customers and turning it into, what they do, either operationally or technologically. I think the first one is just a bias, which is, like, yeah, they it could be an organizational bias, it could be a cultural bias, it could be just like, well, I don't believe, how many customers did you talk to? And the answer to that one is, you actually got to live in the customer's world. And so the top performing companies kind of do that, which is they empathize enough so that when they see the customer draw, as friction, they're already moving towards solving that friction. They're not taking it, they're not kind of stiff arming. It's like, are you sure? Go back and check it. I just don't want to do that. I made a commitment to doing something else, and I'm more committed to doing what I'm doing than listening to customers. I know it sounds odd, but that's true, and that's part of the cultural barrier. I think the other part is they're committed to a technology path because it's they were the author of it, they were the architect of that blueprint, and they don't want to give up on it. And at that case, I think AI has now given us permission to say, look, whatever the blueprint was, like the capabilities are changing so fast. Find what's right. Now, I think that's where you come in, which is it doesn't matter who's right. We just need the best solution to deliver our brand, proposition
Yeah.
and capabilities. And it doesn't matter who. And that's a flexible operating model as well, which is, whether we build it or buy it, who cares? Our
Right.
customers really don't care. Okay.
Right. Right. That's great. So you work with tech giants like Microsoft, Oracle, Google, and AWS to help their customer identify where technology can be used better. What's the most common gap you see between what the technology can do and how companies are actually using it?
Yeah, I think I know it's going to sound trite, but like the use cases, the biggest gap is the use cases people think about are too narrow and too technical. And so think of use cases in more of a jobs to be done situation, which is I want to get something done. How's your technology help me do that? As opposed to here's what our technology can do. Here's how we'd like you to use it, because that's the difference in adoption. And so,
Mm.
so certain examples, we had one where we're using AI to actually make networking connection, and and the technologists, all they want to talk about is how accurate their matching was, instead of of different people and where they're getting their data. And at the end of the day, the customers were confused about what am I going to use this thing for? Okay. And then when we broke it down into their three use cases, everyone said, oh, no, those three use cases I can use that for. But they were look at it from an outside in, jobs to be done and use case situation. And it will be a driven, user drawn yeah, set of solutions as opposed to kind of technology push.
Yeah, that's kind of the brand equivalent. Sometimes in execution, we see, and we do some training with our folks on this, where the customer is speaking in the language of results. So they're saying, well, when can I have it? When will it be deployed? When will it be launched? And if the team members are saying, well, the flex capacitor isn't flexing enough, and so once we fix the flex capacitor, then we'll be able to do the next thing, and about three words in the result, it's results language and execution language are not they're not speaking the same language. They're both speaking English, but it's just not the
Yeah,
same language. And that's kind of what you just articulated is the use cases are the language of outcomes. Like
correct.
what do I get for leveraging in this? The how to use it or how it makes your job easier or it's just sometimes like kind of starting in the middle of the problem
Right.
rather than the bookends. You put X in, you get Y out. Um, and we even see this in marketing and copywriting. The you is now the most powerful language in marketing copy, where even just a few years ago, people were writing website copy that was all about we. That we was the brand language. We do this, we do that, and it just resulted in brands just talking about themselves, right? And
Correct.
and then folks were having to translate their need to what that brand does.
Right.
But then we kind of all transitioned to like story brand based marketing, which is like you more talking directly to our ideal customer about what they get. And it sounds like you're finding that translation really important.
Ben, that's not a trivial translation. If you're starting about starting something with we, it's really an inside out, discussion. And I think a lot of CMOs said, well, they need to know what our brand stands for. Okay, and that's all. That's fine. But when you make the transition to you, now you're talking in customer terms. Okay, and I just applaud that move alone. Now you're saying what do they care about, and what are we doing how does our brand match up against their needs? And it's that translation. And when you get that really done really well, and it just takes a lot of rework cycles to get that really smooth, then you've got a brand flywheel that can almost not be stopped as long as you keep doing that. But it's got to be powered by the customer as well.
Yeah, it's great. You've worked with everyone from Google, Walmart, Wells Fargo. Are there common patterns in how the most successful enterprise companies approach customer experience?
Yeah, what makes the great ones great is that they want to look at it from a customer or user standpoint. Okay, they're committed to that, and they don't. The best ones barely talk about what they're doing internally. They just want to live in the customer side. And when they do that, they're going to spend plenty of time, on looking inside out. Okay, but they make that investment. The second the thing they do is they start moving right away. So there's a fast action. In the friction books, it's like you got to find the friction and then you got to fix the friction. Okay, and if you're slow about doing that, you're never gonna, it's never gonna work out for you because what you're trying to create is a flywheel of innovation and value that you're delivering to the customers. And to do that, you've got to move fast, and you've got to move all the time. And so if people are doing that, then that momentum is going to drive some positivity. New members to the team will say, "What are we doing here?" It's like, "Well, we're doing this." They'll jump on. They'll be driving the flywheel forward, and pretty soon, candidly, it can't be stopped. Okay, and the customers see it, and they just keep jumping on forever. And all this high scale companies. So think about Apple with the iPod, with the smartphone. That's exactly what they did. It was all outside in. You look at what Steve Jobs has said, which is like if even his comment about we need to know, we need to be able to kind of tell the customers what they want. That's not from an arrogant standpoint. That's from a customer intimacy standpoint, which is we know them so well and we know our technology so well, we can put something out there in front of them that's going to move them forward. And he believed that only they could do that. But that's very much an outside-in approach.
Yeah, that's great. Conversely, what's the biggest mistake you see enterprise companies make?
Yeah, I think in kind of taking customer insights and turning it into actions, I see two things. One is there's always an argument about priorities, which is is it this or that? We have found that customer-centric projects kind of align a number of different things. And if you have three competing projects, sometimes that can turn into one non-competing project if you really want it to, if it's going to impact the customer well. Because it's not three department projects, but it can be one customer project if aligned correctly. So we see a lot of the internal alignment. We also think I think the dilemma is for CX projects specifically, the CX community isn't as disciplined as a lot of the other project proponents are in terms of showing the business case. And they're not getting approval on things that really should be approved. And I think that was why I got into this business and wrote the book. I wrote the book because the return on investment from CX projects I believe to be better than anything else. And we've got the data to prove it, but at the same time, if you don't put in the rigor and discipline to prove it, then you haven't earned your spot at the top of the Olympics are coming up. The way you get to the gold medal is you got to beat everyone, and that takes a lot of effort and discipline.
Yeah.
And
No,
and
that's
it's
great.
missing that piece, and that's bad on us.
Yeah, and I can see that. Like in enterprise, you have a lot of competing priorities. And I think an effective CX initiative, based on what you're saying, can be a pivot to a changing, like prioritizing to win rather than prioritizing not to lose.
Yeah.
Rather than, hey, how do we get to that next EBITDA milestone? And so how do we get really tight on some of our spending? Really having a confidence that you're doing everything you can to win the customer and retain them. That's like playing to win, playing to get to market dominance. Of course, you'll have the projects to make sure you're doing it effectively, but without the CX voice in the room, the user voice in the room, I could see things gravitate towards the playing not to lose rather than playing to win.
Yeah. That's well said.
Awesome. So I'm going to transition to a lightning round so that we can end strong. And just want to get your quick feedback on a series of questions here. So, best customer experience you've had as a customer in the last year.
Oh, I had one with American Express where they actually saved the day. I got somebody. We had a situation at a hotel, and it clearly wasn't going our way. Amex got on the phone, came in, everything got taken care of, and I'd say that they're pros. They have clout, and they were able to kind of talk the language through people that made a huge difference.
Awesome. Good shout out for Amex there. Worst friction moment that made you switch a brand.
Hard to believe, but Federal Express. In this last year, I've been a FedEx user and business customer for gosh, 30 years. And they lost my business this year because they lost 3 packages, couldn't track 5 other packages out of a total of 20 packages. I got to the point where I'd rather trust American Airlines to deliver a bag than trust FedEx to deliver a box. And when you even mention that, if those are the words come out of your mouth, I don't know how bad it can. I like it can't be worse than that.
Right. Yeah, and you're not on a list somewhere of a customer win back. You're just yeah, that's great. Well, hopefully they will figure it out. One AI tool that's changed how you do your work.
I'd say Chat GPT. I just turned in a big research report on not a client-based report, but something I actually had to develop for an academic credential, and it helped me understand the landscape 10 times faster than I could have before.
That's great. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Gamma. Gamma
Mm,
app is helping me do PowerPoint type
yeah,
content and present ideas really quickly. It's taking a lot of the ticking and tying workload out.
yeah.
I'm appreciating that. So Stanford GSB or CX Consulting, one lesson from business school that still guides you.
Yeah, this is going to sound weird, but the one non-traditional thing I learned at Stanford was that you'll be most successful when you find when you do things that are easy, effortless, and enjoyable. And that's a life lesson that I learned in Creativity and Business by Michael Ray. And I find that CX consulting is easy, effortless, and highly enjoyable, and that's why I do it.
All right. That's awesome. Wine collector for 30 plus years. What does building a wine collection teach you about building customer relationships?
Oh man. They're like, okay, now you really got me. I think the one thing is it's not the quality of the wine, it's the quality of the experience when you have it. So we talk about customer experience. And like if I had the same wine 3 different times, I would actually have 3 different experiences of that wine. So if I'm having it with you at a great restaurant with a great view, it's going to be amazing. If I have it in a place that's noisy and loud with lousy glasses and a clumsy waiter, our experience is not going to be the same. It's not the wine, it's the people and the experience.
Yeah, that's great. And then what's one thing every CEO should do tomorrow to reduce customer friction?
You know, I, you know, sounds trite, but it's spending time with your with your most important and your target customers, understanding their perspective, so that you can look at your business objectively.
That's great. I think I need to do that tomorrow. So the frictionless brand experience is coming out soon. So for our listeners who want to dive deeper, what's the one chapter they should read first, or how should they approach the book?
Well, chapter one is about why brand experiences matter and put some definitions in place. But the chapter on the types of friction is the one where I think everyone can read it, resonate with it, and come out with actionable. I got to go fix this stuff right away problems. And I think they'll see different friction that they've not known. They wouldn't put it in the category of friction, but they go, now I get it.
Yeah. If someone's sitting in the C-suite listening to this thinking, I need to get Greg's team in here, what's the best way to reach you?
LinkedIn. If LinkedIn is an easy way, or Greg at tucker-co.com is a right way. Just email or LinkedIn. We're always available.
Yeah, we'll make sure to get that in the show notes. Any final thoughts for our audience of CEOs, CTOs, and COOs who are trying to drive growth through better customer experience?
Yeah. Don't think of it as a soft fuzzy practice. Think of it as the most powerful and impactful business lever you can pull, much more so than product innovation, mergers and acquisitions, or anything like that.
Great. Well, Greg, it's been great. I think this is a really insightful episode. I really appreciate you being with us. Thanks for being on the Particle Accelerator.
All right. Thanks, Ben. It's a pleasure.